maidens a milk and did go. 3 maidens a milk and did go. And the wind it did blow high, the wind it did blow low. It tossed their petticoats to and fro. So it's off to the green woods went they, and it's off to the green woods went they, and he tapped at the bush, and the bird it did fly in, a little above her lily white. Her sparkling eyes they did turn round, just as if she had been all in a swoon. And she cried, "I've a bird, and a very pretty bird, and he's pecking away at his own ground. He's a help to the bird in the bush. He's a help to the bird in the bush. And we'll drink up the sun, we'll drink down the moon, that the people say little or much." Hello, welcome back to the Ineffable Else. Hello if you are new here. Today we are going to be continuing with our series about the planet Jupiter, and we will be focusing on Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius. It will also apply to you if you have natally Jupiter in the 11th house or Jupiter conjunct with Uranus. So it's a really gorgeous place for Jupiter to be. It's a very nice combination always whenever you have an Aquarius and Sagittarian factor, because it's two very forward-thinking, optimistic, philosophical, highbrow archetypes coming together and throwing aside the sort of practical matters for the moment and being able to think big. And it is about the mind and about thinking. That's Aquarius. It's an air sign, and so it does encourage us to focus more energy up here. So it's a very interested and expanded mind, very curious, incredibly curious, and very ahead of the curve. So forward thinking beyond what is currently underway. It's a very liberating and freeing place to be. You're not tied down by the binds of society or by the comings and goings of the day, of the daily press, of the news, of the current things in circulation. Or possibly you are finding yourself wrapped up in these things and trying to evolve them and pull them forward and transcend them. But there won't be an automatic buying into the current themes of the day. It's a very, very astrological placement, probably the most, having this combination. It means you're going to be astrologically inclined and interested in the exploration of the stars and how they affect our consciousness, how they affect the psyche, the body, physicality, habits, hobbies, personality, the ego, and the karma which we've attracted and created and held on to and are here to move through and progress through. The aspect of forward thinking and a focus on the future makes it a very fantastic place to really make progress for the soul. So if you have some kind of toing and froing in other parts of your chart, this is a great thing to engage with when you want to dream big and project yourself into your highest potential. whilst being able to observe and see yourself as this diamond in the rough, to see yourself as really something incredibly precious and valuable that is just coated in layers of concept and confusion and possibly mislabeled. It's a curious thing when we think about ego and identity, that sometimes, especially as an Aquarius, you can be very, very good at something and you get a label put on you, but it could be a mislabeling. It could not actually be what your soul's truest path and trajectory might actually be. So there's a timelessness, as always, with Uranus. It's beyond Saturn. And in this timelessness, there's nothing to say you can't embark on education in your 50s. There's a flagrant disregard for the age that you are. And there's a universality where when you're a child, you are simultaneously an old-aged person. And when you're an old-aged person, you have that flexibility of mind and character that a developing child would have. So there's a playfulness here with masks and egos and identity, and playing with concepts and not being so rigidly glued to them. There's the understanding of the evolution of the mind and the opening of a door leading to another greater cavern leading to the universe. It's as we learn more, the less we realize we know, and the humility that comes with that kind of Jupiterian exploration of knowledge, which will lead to wisdom. But it's the kind of wisdom where you don't sit back in your high horse. It's a knowing that you have so much more to know. There's a freakiness and a weirdness, strange factor, strange quality to this, which is never to be underestimated. Never allow anybody else to judge you for this quality. This is something very unique. This is your unique gift to offer to the universe. So never turn down your weirdness. Really allow yourself to embody that and to take advantage of this, because who really wants to be a sheep? This ability to be playful with the ego is really, really desperately needed in this day and age, with this time of identity politics and people wearing their identity as if it is, I mean, it's a fundamental part of human evolution that we go down this route of what is my identity, and having an identity crisis. It's a collective thing which in the past only a handful, normally people more Aquarian leaning, would have had to address, and now it's sort of being brought down to the very earthy systems-based Saturnian folks. And it's quite difficult to comprehend, and we start saying, I am this, I am that, I am my sexuality, I am my gender, I am my race, am I these things, does that make me me? And the Sagittarian Aquarius quality is very, very keen to understand that love of all, that equality in terms of worth and love, and the value of each individual human. And your intelligence or your race or your background or your money or your height or your age, it doesn't matter. They're in fact just beautiful nuances reflecting something else which is much deeper, but ultimately they are the packaging. They are just like, it's like getting a Christmas present and being obsessed with the wrapping paper. It doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be discarded. It's supposed to be felt into, and yes, feeling into ancestral trauma, but to then identify with that, you're going to be trapped there. I come from a family which has had many generations of alcoholism, and I could easily identify myself within that, and I did at one stage, because it was something that made me feel like I had some kind of ground to stand on. But my God, what shaky foundations they were. And it took me being able to embrace that part of my ancestry, of my lineage, and bring it in with compassion and understanding. And yes, taking what may be described as a wrong... So what could have been maybe described as a wrong turn or somewhere somewhat of a waste of time was me moving through and processing this ancestral trauma. But then there came to a point where it was like, hold on, I'm not that. I am not that. Sometimes it's easier when it's an addiction or something very evidently negative and having a negative bearing upon one's life. It's easier to let that go. And I haven't had a drink now in 7 years, and I don't miss it at all. And it's sometimes more difficult if we have certain identities which are seen as somehow a currency. They kind of have a value in the world if we are perceived as being a minority group or a victim. Such a big trap at the moment to fall into, identifying with our trauma patterns. And I feel like I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, because if you have this placement, you're very able and you definitely have the capacity to go above and beyond what has happened to you, what you've observed, what you've been through. And you're still here. You're kind of weathered for the better. You know, it's scar tissue. It's something, it's an optimistic perspective on it, which is not unrealistic. It's not closing it down. It's not pretending it didn't happen. It's taking it inside and then utilizing that as a mechanism, as a blueprint and a map so that it doesn't happen again. So I was a victim. I was victimized by that thing that happened. It was out of my hands, out of my control. Therefore, what's the point in dwelling on it? What's the point in living in that and allowing that to abuse me again and again and again? Likewise with my gender, you know, very, very difficult at the moment, relating to our own gender and accepting everything that came before, what it means for women to be born in a woman's body, and the bitterness that I feel that, hang on, why am I carrying the karma for all these women that have been through all of that in the past? Why is that my lot? I want to start new. Well, no, I need to accept all of that. I feel into all of that. It's taken a while to really absorb and allow it to wash through me and be purified, and still want to be a woman at the end of it. Still be very happy to be female and appreciating the differences between the genders. But ultimately then knowing I am a spirit, I'm above that. If you take away my female body, there's probably characteristics of my personality, of my soul, of my spirit that are more feminine, but ultimately the body is the feminine thing, the female thing, and the spirit is something transcending that, something far greater, something far more than human, something far more than the limited structure of the physical realm. Sagittarius gets that. Aquarius really gets that. It's an expansion, and it's a place where Jupiter can come in and it can really spread its wings. It can really stretch its legs out in Aquarius and say, do you mind if I put my hand through the window? It's like Alice in Wonderland. Do you know what? Can I knock down the walls? No problem. You know, I'm really up for, you know, living under the stars anyway. There's a trust in the universe. There's a trust that, and an engagement with nature that knows I can sleep alongside a scorpion and it's not going to sting me. It's a really sure certainty about the eternal nature of life and an acceptance of what will be, but also knowing the will is there for us to manifest our dream reality. But it's not through just sitting and thinking and hoping and praying and trying to run from the things we really don't like. It's sitting there and feeling what is there. And what is there for most human beings is a lot of rage, frustration, a need to control, a lot of things that we felt, a lot of arrested development in general, because most parents are not. It's a really good place with Sagittarian here to bring in that understanding of the past to help Aquarius see where we've been coming from. So it's easier to forgive the alcoholism and the traumas and the repressed and suppressed prejudices and all of the kind of backwards, strange stuff that happened in the 20th century. and then see where that's rooted in, see how the Industrial Revolution was an enormous change to the human psyche, see how now the internet is manipulating and changing our minds in ways that we can't even prophesize, and in some ways we would even prefer it to have been to be something, a grand narrative of a new world order coming to plant seeds of chaos. And the world is more chaotic than that. It's just something organically that seems to be happening. It's a lot of different players with a different varying visibility creating this, and we are co-creators within this. So it just comes down to how you use your will day to day, moment to moment, how you react to different circumstances, and the attitude. So much of it is about attitude, whilst really feeling the deeper attitude that's happening inside, the deeper reality. So it's not just all love and light and happiness. No. Our last holiday, we went to a concentration camp. It wasn't going there and feeling the love and the light and the no, it's going there and like, this is really heavy, dense, dark energy to feel into. What on earth got us here? And then looking at what the human mind does, how it wants to close down. Richie thinks it's quite funny that I say this, but I came away feeling really disappointed in Hitler. I was really surprised that he wasn't more impressive in any way. I read some of Mein Kampf. I've watched many documentaries from different sources, and generally just a psychopath, very, very, very disconnected, very angry, and yet with one size fits all solution, very simple, easy to understand solution, channeling a lot of anger and rage that he had, that obviously a lot of other people were carrying. And then a big part of the population are just tired, exhausted, don't really want to engage in it, don't really want to bother questioning him or standing up to him and his cronies. So then the dictatorship occurs through those circumstances. So it's very important for us to not see someone like him as coming out of a vacuum, or as being all powerful and deeply evil and just like a criminal mastermind. It's not that. It's a culmination of many different factors, all to do with us not doing our individual work for whatever reason, because it's just hell when you look at the first part of the 20th century. And also not having the education, the tools, the scope to see all of this, and being fed propaganda. And instead now we've been granted this opportunity to, wait a minute, whoop, take yourself out of this matrix, out of this kind of dun 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 rhythmic and kind of almost comforting frog stepping way of behaving, where you just kind of follow the masses, follow them, it can't be that bad, can't go that wrong, oh, I've got a job, it must be okay. No, it's about questioning everything, and Aquarius is great at doing that. Really irritating for many people, but it's so important that you exist, so important that you engage with this quality within you, so we don't go waddling off a cliff as one. It's understanding the nuance of loving everyone equally and seeing the uniqueness and the beauty in each person, whilst knowing how to set boundaries and to make sure that nobody overtakes someone else. The main way of doing that is to state your position and then withdraw, keep observing, and silence is very, very powerful. Silence whilst keeping your eyes fully open and then coming in at the moment where it's necessary to say the thing that needs to be said without fear. It's strange how it's such an airy sign, but really it is like a rock. I'm surrounded by rocks here, and they have been through so much, and they've weathered the storms, and they are very sure of themselves, and Aquarius is fixed air. So it's a mind that's very sure and certain of itself, but you need to understand the quality of mind as being something which is changing, something which is fluid, something which is always open and always changing. So it's like there's a mechanism in there which is fixed. There's a mechanism within your mind which is always open to new information and always skeptical, and always has the focus, the attention, the forthrightness and the confidence to dissect without writing anything off. It's an incredible tool, and that's the fixed nature. It's not about getting a set of beliefs when you're 15 and sticking with that for the rest of your life. No, it's a humility to be able to evolve and transform, to take in new information, and to alter your conclusions based on what you actually perceive. And this kind of fluidity is incredibly necessary in the dialogue of the day. Because the world is opened up to us so much, we increasingly are now going into a black and white way of thinking, where we feel comfort in things being good and bad and right and wrong and cancelled. What is this? Just shutting down debate, shutting down conversation. There's a fear that would increase fascism, that would increase the likes of the Nazi Party. But the thing with the Nazi Party is they were just talking in a vacuum. They were just talking among themselves, and it was a bubble. There were people questioning it, but how loud was your voice in those moments? We're in a different world now. We can't fear debate and open communication as we may have done in the past. We're in a very different state of being from then, in terms of the circumstances which surround us. There's a lot more comfort, there's a lot more security, but what we need to watch out for is old patterns coming back, which are fueled by fear and anger and wanting a quick one-size-all-fits solution that is never ever going to be possible because of the uniqueness. And I've done enough readings now with enough people around the world, from different countries, from different backgrounds, different ages, and just traveled enough and met enough people now to know how different everybody is, and everybody's unique perspective is there for a reason. They've come to that conclusion not because they're stupid, not because they're backwards, not because they're, overly soft or overly hard or any of these. It's because of a set of circumstances which make total sense when you look at their lifespan. It makes total perfect sense to come to those conclusions. So that real understanding of polarity as being fundamentally meaningless anyway, having a particular view or wearing particular clothes or having a particular hair color is packaging. It's meaningless. And I say this as someone whose political beliefs have shifted back and forth all the time, to now a point where I feel very engaged with this placement of Jupiter with Aquarius, because it's a collective perspective, seeing the whole, wanting what's best for the whole, but knowing there is no way to just lay down a solution for everyone. It's a person by person, individual will thing. You cannot force people into a doctrine. If they engage in the doctrine, it's only really because they're not willing to engage with their own will, God-given will. That is criminal, not to have our own will engaged and come to our own conclusions. I understand why. The world is tiring and tough sometimes, but to be that embodied, very confident, very shiny person who has their own mind and has their own views and just lives their life and doesn't wish any harm on anyone. Because there's also, from up here, I'm literally up here on the hill, you see the bigger picture and you see what collective decision making can do to the land, and it has to be much more individual and much more soul by soul, one by one. Sometimes irritating for the Aquarian fast-paced sort of utopian way of being, but it's what it's going to take, because we humans also have a different vibrational frequency, a different timeline, and a different arc in terms of how we come to a more loving and whole picture, which is ultimately what the sadhus say, which is the work that they do on themselves as individual souls, the darkness they're willing to see, the things they're willing to explore, is ultimately then helping the collective consciousness move. But there's never a grappling and a grabbing and trying to shake someone into submission or to join your cause. It's, I'm on my path, I've set my course, I'm going with it, I'm open to change, I'm going to use my will in accordance, but ultimately it's me doing me and you doing you. And this is utterly unique. It's not defined by any little features and factors of the outside of skin color or sex or age. It's so much more universal and yet so much more specific. It's so much more specific. Every human being is utterly unique. No matter which of these 12 archetypes we have 360 degrees of a circle of our birth chart, and all of the different degrees, the different placements are completely unique. Two people can have identical birth charts. They're not going to be the same either, because they'll be born to different mothers who have different karma of their own. It's unique, and I don't believe in tribalism. And if you have this placement, I doubt you do too. So, thank you for joining me, and please see the website ineffableelse.com. You're very welcome here. Subscribe to the channel, share it around to anyone who you think may benefit from this, and I will be seeing you in the next one. Take care. Bye.